Insider. My name is Brian, and thank you for logging on. Oh, and this is Tim. We just had an awesome week in Geneva at SIHH, and today is the day that we're going to talk a little bit more about it. So I'm sure you already did an episode on Monday, I think, talking with Jason about SIHH. Is that right?
That's a fact. We talked about our impressions, our favorites, crazy things I saw, and we answered a couple of live questions. But it is a week of watches, which means naturally questions went unanswered, and that's why we're here.
Yeah, no reason we can't beat SIHH into a dead horse.
That's a dead horse, like the new Faliano collection straps by Shasher LeCoultre.
But no, so we've got a great show. Why don't we start with a quick wrist check just to get us started off right?
Absolutely.
You're wearing a Reverso.
Yeah, smoking. And you know what? This is the watch I should have worn to SIHH, but I forgot to change before I left, so I wound up wearing the Compressor Extreme, and it was like a heretical statement when the new Polaris collection came out. But this is my Reverso Duo, night and day, and you can see it's actually a set of hand-painted white lacquered numerals on one side with the night and day indication, and then it also has the second time zone on the back. But what makes this one a little bit different is that both the reverse and the obverse feature luminescent hands, and that's very unconventional for these duos. It's the Grand Tie case, and what also makes this one a bit different is that it's in JLC's gray gold, so it's a white gold alloy. A little bit different from your standard duo, 42 lug to lug, about 26 across. Love this piece. Manual wind, classical, smoking.
Amazing watch. And as you know, I've got the Reverso itch going on right now, so I'm happy to see that. So today I am wearing a 5164A in stainless steel with a green khaki strap. I've actually been wearing this watch for probably the past 2 or 3 weeks. I'm in the process of moving. I just moved, and all of my watches are tucked away in places I'll probably never be able to find them again. So I've been, rocking this. Obviously, it's always a nice opportunity to be able to wear, a watch with a GMT function when you're traveling.
And let me just show you how ahead of the curve this man was with the green of that strap. This is the PAM.
Green is the new blue.
It's the 737 from last year. Beat Panerai to the punch. Score another one for Paddock. But this man chose the strap.
But no, so great show, and as Tim already started us off, we've got a couple cool watches from the vault that are here tonight. These are recent pre-owned pieces that we've taken in, and then I'm going to go through my top 5 picks from SIHH and maybe talk a little bit more about the show.
Definitely. And guys, it's a live format. We're watching the chat box. If you've got a PC or a laptop and your viewer has the chat box, get in there. We love to interact, and with 2 sets of hands, we can actually type and respond even if we're not going dialogue across the camera. So we've got watches on the table from the last 2 model years, so they're all relatively recent. They're all special edition pieces.
And all across the brand spectrum.
That's a fact. So why don't we open fire with one of our From the Vault editions? Why don't we go with the one that was chronologically first, because this watch came out in 2016.
Go for it. So we'll get a zoom into the watch. So this right here is the Sapphire Crystal case Hublot Chronograph. So this is actually the first iteration of the watch. It was a limited edition of, I believe, 500 pieces for the world.
That's correct.
And they were sold out immediately. So this watch has spawned numerous variations. They've come out with the perpetual calendar, they've come out with different colors, but this was the watch that started it all. You have the quick justice strap, that he just showed there. And the watch came in at a very aggressive price point in the 50s.
Yes, and keep in mind, your frame of reference would be Richard Mille full sapphire case references that cost deep into 6 figures, and
it was
in
$1
some
million
cases,
watch, I believe.
I think
it was like a $1.1 million watch, something like that. But this was Hublot's answer. The watch did incredibly well. I think they really started off they weren't the first on the Sapphire Crystal movement, but they really got things going where other people sort of followed suit. The watch is absolutely beautiful, and for a watch on the wrist, while it's not inexpensive, it definitely makes a statement.
Again, if you're talking about 1/20th the price of that first Richard Mille. Also, it's worth mentioning that other brands that have done Sapphire have, prior to Hublot, tended to do it in monoblock fashion, which is both more difficult to repair if something breaks and more expensive to purchase up front. What I like about this watch is that it's almost an ironic statement. In crafting the entire watch from Sapphire with a gummy-style silicone strap, Hublot's created a watch that almost looks like a toy. Or if you want to be a little bit more inside baseball, when a company comes out with a new movement that they really want to show off, many times they'll build a plastic or a thermoplastic display case, and they'll send out these demonstrator models to their dealers. This watch looks like a demonstrator made of plastic to show off the movement. It's almost like it's a thing not intended for retail, and I love it. I love the fact that it almost thumbs its nose at Swatch, saying, you know, we can put on a good freak show, we can do it for $50,000, and we can do it without compromising the quality of the watch. And that's a fact. This is a flyback chronograph, it's a 72-hour power reserve, it's a column wheel movement, it's their manufacturer.
It's a fabulous movement. I mean, again, the Unico movement is a extremely high-end movement that's made extraordinarily well, and I think that this really shows Hublot's manufacturing prowess at its best, that they're able to take a concept and execute it at an very aggressive price going into the market. Answering Watch Yoda, yes, the logo for Hublot is on the crystal of the watch. The only thing that threw me about this watch in the beginning was the strap, because it is a weird concept having like a clear strap, but I put on the other black straps and things that came with some of the other watches, and nothing looks nearly as good as the see-through strap.
I'll also say this, guys. If you're familiar with the vulcanized rubber Hublot straps, the series of translucent straps on the Sapphire, first there was this, then there was the black, then came the fuchsia, then came the blue. All of those are silicone straps. So if you're familiar, I likened this almost to a Swatch aesthetic. If you're familiar with the silicone gummy straps on a Swatch, that's exactly what this is, which means, yeah, you'll probably get about 2 years out of it rather than the 4 to 5 you get out of a rubber strap, but it's also a lot more comfortable on the wrist. And with this strap architecture, it's super easy to just swap out to a new one when the time comes.
And it's also a watch that I think is hard to appreciate the finer details of it, seeing a photograph of it, because when you're just looking at a picture of the watch, it really doesn't come across as rich as it feels, when you have it in your hands and you're looking at the finer points of the case construction and even into the movement.
And I'll say this, that goes for every single one of the Sapphire Hublot models, whether colored or not. None of them look right in photos. They are impossible to photograph. Every single one of them impresses in person. And
it's a full retail watch. I mean, again, the watch it's a full retail watch. The watch, even in the secondary market, is selling right at about, full pop. So, they still very much are in demand, and it's a watch that when it first came out for 500 pieces, they probably could have just as easily done 1,000 or 1,500 and sold just as much. So, and they discontinued doing it in this exact configuration in the chrono. So, great watch.
Okay. So, question coming in from David Hefkin. Hey Tim, I've never been more excited about a watch than the new Vacheron 56 in steel. You mentioned it's not Geneva hallmark. On Vacheron's site, it has a Geneva hallmark symbol beside the watch. This bears some clarification. There are 3 models, each one available in steel or gold. The entry-level model is nicely executed, but it's the one of the 3 that's not the Geneva hallmark. It features what's known as a caliber 1326, which is made for Vacheron by Valfleurier, which is Richemont's sort of white label movement factory for those brands that don't necessarily have manufacture capability. Here, because it's sharing that architecture with the Cartier MC 1904, they're distributing the cost of development over many more units than Vacheron could command on its own. So you get this non-Geneva hallmark automatic in the entry-level self-winding, the Vacheron Constantin 56 self-winding. What you do get is a hand-finished, hand-skeletonized rotor that's absolutely up to Vacheron standards, and a higher level of execution on the 1326 than you'll see on its Cartier equivalent. What you won't get is Geneva hallmark levels of finishing, where 30 to 50% of the value of the movement is tied up in the hand finishing. It's good, it's not immaculate. For that, you're going to have to step up to the Date-8 with Power Reserve or the Triple Calendar, or just buy the $15,000 Key to Leal in steel.
So, I agree with you. I think that the watch was really nicely executed. I really would have liked to have seen the watch as a Geneva seal. I think that for the incremental dollars, let's say instead of, the watch only retails for $11,800.
Yes.
So let's call it a $3,000 surcharge. I don't know, I'm just picking a number out of thin air. Let's say it was $14,800. I really do think that you would have had, as many people possibly looking to buy the watch at that $14,800 price point as you would at the $11,800. And you're going to have, you would have had the Geneva hallmarks that would have held true to the history of the brand.
I think it's important to note, though, that if you do increase the price to $14.8, for $14.9, you're getting the key to Lille in steel.
Right.
I think there's a hope within Vacheron that this watch is not going to cannibalize their last effort to make that model line succeed. I thought the black dials and the blue dials in steel were a good effort with the key to Lille, a watch that started out too weird with too many customization options, too different from what Vacheron normally sells. Yeah, I would say it was a full 10 years ahead of its time.
Because he even had it was, I mean, it wasn't an iPad, but it was like, you know.
But there was a customizer.
It was like a customizer, you know, it was like having one of those, like the flip phones before they got sophisticated.
Yeah. It was an interesting concept that was literally released 10 years ago this year. So Vacheron has continued to kind of scale back its ambitions with that watch, and now they're at a point where they realize that a 56 self-winding with a Geneva hallmark would eliminate the last reason for being for the steel key to Lille, which is it's the entry to Geneva hallmark watchmaking at Vacheron, and it's priced at exactly $14.9. So what Brian is saying is definitely true from a value perspective. They would sell just as many of the 56, but they're not done recouping their investment in the steel key to Lille just yet. Maybe the time comes that they phase that one out and the entry-level 56 becomes Geneva hallmark.
Could be. I mean, you know, at 11.8, I think that it is going to bring a whole group of new people into the brand. And I really do think it is going to, you know, it's going to take a shot at JLC. I think that you're going to have people that walk into a store that would have been looking at a master control chronograph or another piece, you know, of that sort, and they're going to be able to go, and now they're going to be looking at a Vacheron Constantine. So I think it opens up a whole new demographic to the brand, which is really nice. The only thing that I hope it does, you know, that it doesn't do is, you know, cannibalize the sales of some of the higher end pieces. But I understand, you know, I understand the move. It will bring some new blood into, you know, into the brand, and, you know, hopefully, you know, that leads into, you know, selling more watches. But as far as secondary value goes, I think they're going to hold up great. I think, you know, at the 11.8...
In steel, they will.
In steel, they definitely will. I mean, at the 11.8 price point, even with some depreciation, you know, at a certain dollar amount, it's still a beautifully made Vacheron, and I just don't believe it's going to drop that far. You know, I think that you're going to see that's a watch that's selling in the secondary market, you know, at probably, let's call it, $7,500 to $9,500. I mean, again, you know, somewhere in that ballpark, but that's where I think they end up selling for it, you know, and probably on the higher end of that.
Yeah, I would say if you like those, definitely check out the Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Control line, both the traditional black and silver dial with the clasp and the more entry-level $5,700 sector dial version, because that's a stellar watch, and I think in terms of mechanical specification, they're highly comparable. Mm-hmm. In terms of dial quality and I would even say movement finish, because the hand-finished rotor, yes, the Vacheron, even the self-winding, is at a higher level than the JLC. I would say the dials of these watches come across as flat and anodyne in the photos. The watches have a lot more depth and luster and detail when you see them in person. I actually think, David, you will like the watch more if you take a trip to a boutique or a dealer and try it on the wrist.
So, next watch on the table, we're going to get through these quick so we can talk about the you know, top 5 picks, is the PAM 737. So this is the 10-day GMT with the green dial. They made this watch in a 1950s case, I believe a Radomir case, and then this watch as well. So it was 3 variations, is that right?
Yes, this is the Ocho, by the way, guys. This is the 8-day power reserve, just to clarify that. They made 3 versions. The 735 was a traditional wire lug Radomir in titanium. 736, worn by our friend Araz, who actually took a fan photo with me.
1950s Luminor, is that right?
It is actually, I believe, a Radomir 1940, that one. But that's the one that's in steel. And this one here is the complication, the Mono Pusher GMT 8-day. So there are 3 of them. 2 of them are in titanium. The middle child, the Rod 1940, is in steel. And all of them are attractive because they took something that was hitherto only available on the Bronzos, that beautiful matte green dial with the faded rose.
1940.
Sort of a simulated patina coloration. And the 2 tones work really well in in tandem. Being able to get this on a non-bronzo was a big boon to Panerai. I believe these were boutique exclusives at the time.
So they still are boutique exclusives, except for this particular variation of the watch. I do believe some of these have matriculated into the dealer network, but only a very few. The rest of them are boutique only.
Also worth mentioning, this is from the Charter family of Panerai calibers back in 2005. I mentioned Valfleurier and that kind of white label Richemont movement manufacturer. With Eric Klein, the engineer, Panerai got off the ground in 2005 with the 2000 series movements. This is the 2004, and you can see it is richly appointed. Full balance bridge, free sprung. It features the mono pusher, vertical clutch, column wheel chronograph, the dogtooth power reserve. It actually has an AM/PM that's coaxial with constant seconds at 9 o'clock. It does have a traditional sandwich style dial, and you can see the depth of the indices here. What I also like is the beautiful bubble-like profile of this watch. This is something that's often lost in the profile shots that you see from head-on the internet, and it's the side sweep view of the case. It has a wonderful vintage lofted sapphire that projects so far beyond the case, it is almost like it's almost like a thermoplastic in the way it distorts the appearance of the dial. So this is a gorgeous watch, and it really has to be seen in person to appreciate its tones, its textures, and even its contours. I really like this one, but then again, I like green, and this was a good, well-planned, well-executed series of green-themed watches.
Exactly. So it's limited to 200 pieces for the world. One of the other variations was limited to 250, and the other 300. So, you know, I think following the blue dial pieces that were boutique only as well, I think they have done extraordinarily well, and it was a great follow-up. It's Panerai has been doing great things. They've been coming out with a lot of product. That's it's not crazy and outside the box. It's
they
definitely
didn't take too many chances.
No,
this year.
you know what?
I'll
They built
that.
stuff that was in their wheelhouse. Things that I think will fill out the rest of the collection. That's good. And then you have pieces like this that are limited, hard to get, boutique only, that they've had a lot of positive success on. So I think that the brand is definitely on the up and up, and the folks that are running it for the United States, Giovanni, is just doing an amazing job.
Interesting turnover in leadership at Panerai this year. Angelo Bonatti, who has run Panerai for Richemont ever since Richemont acquired the company, and he's the only CEO Panerai has ever had as a civilian watchmaker in the Richemont era. He will be stepping down, and Jean-Marc Pontoret will be moving over from Roger Dubuis. It'll be an interesting transition because the shelf life of a Richemont CEO is generally measured in 18 to 72 months. And Angelo Bonatti, at the helm for the better part of 2 decades, has been the beating heart of Panerai for that entire period, for better and for worse. And a turnover in command and a turnover in vision is going to be a sea change for the company. And yes, I realize sea change is a bit of a pun in Panerai's case. But we're going to see some big, I would say, in the next 3 to 4 years, because that's the product development cycle. Once the Jean-Marc watches start hitting the market, you're going to see some very different sensibilities about these Panerai products. I'll also mention John T. in our chat box saying, Panerais look like something you can get from a vending machine. Ouch! I'm going to say maybe a vending machine in Dubai.
Could be right next to the vending machine that you can buy, Bitcoin from, and to the, right of that, the vending machine that sells like gold bars.
Yeah. Well, there's the Bitcoin vending machine, and then you put the Bitcoin wallet card into the vending machine that sells the Ferraris, and then the claw drops the Ferrari, and you drive over to the one that sells Panerai, and then you hit the strip, the mile-long indoor air-conditioned strip. But yeah, so John, trust me, they're better in person.
But no, so moving right along, we have here this is, I think, the first time that we've brought this watch on the show. We haven't seen too many of them just yet, so I'm happy that we have it here. This is actually a pre-owned version of the watch. Is a 5960G. So this is the latest iteration of the watch. It came out at Basel World this past year. You've got the brown calfskin strap, the blue dial, and you can really see that the color scheme is similar to that of the 5524G. So this is a watch that I think is, a watch that you just knew was going to do extraordinarily well from the very beginning. But I think that it was a sleeper at the show. They came out with the 5960 steel with a black dial that, obviously got some attention. The 5320G Perpetual, which was the new Perpetual with the cream dial and the syringe hands, is what really stole the show. And I think that as a 5960 that they've been producing the model for a long time, it really just fell into the background a little bit. But once we got it in our hands, I mean, you could just see the watch is magnificent. It's not nearly as dressy as some of the other 5960s have been. It's wearable casually. I think that it's a great substitute if you like the coloring of the 5524G, but you really didn't want a pilot's watch, and that you would gravitate more towards an annual chrono. So we've only gotten very few of them in, and so far the watch has done very well.
I will say this watch did kind of get lost in the shuffle in a year when Baselworld was dominated by the 5320, and then the rest of the year was completely eclipsed by the Grand Exhibition in New York and the models that debuted there. So this was an easy one to forget, even as it might be one of the best versions of the 5960 since we first saw the model in 2006. Now it's worth mentioning it's not the first 5960 in white gold, nor is it the first to cop this aesthetic. You're going to want to open a different window in Google and type in Patek Philippe 5960G Moscow Boutique Limited Edition, because in 2013 there was a Moscow Boutique Limited Series watch that was almost like, I'm not going to say the evil twin, but let's call it like the fraternal twin of this watch.
Well, so I mean, it's the 5960 Platinum Blue, but a G.
Yeah, the other thing,
it's pretty. I mean, it's pretty. Very different blue.
Also worth mentioning is that there were quite a few changes to this watch across the board last year. The shape of the hands changed, the seconds chapter ring outboard of the hour track changed, even the hand for the power reserve scale and the semi-infamous mono counters calibrations and coloration changed dramatically last year. So we saw last year probably the biggest changes to this watch since the steel version came out in 2014. A quiet hit, in my opinion, one of the most attractive Pateks of 2017, and an overlooked under-the-radar addition to the collection.
I got a chance to try on the steel black dial version, and I absolutely love the watch. I think that sometimes it's a little bit hard to find I shouldn't even say sometimes. It is hard to find a steel everyday Patek Philippe watch outside of the Nautilus and Aquanaut collection. And as somebody that has had multiple Nautiluses, sometimes it can feel like they all feel the same. And
Sure.
As a great everyday watch, I think the 5960 really sort of follows suit. And this could very well be one of the last iterations of the watch. I mean, they've been producing the watch for quite a long time. There's been lots of iterations, and this very well could be the end of the product cycle, and there might only be a one-year run on these watches. And it's a situation like this where, if they produce this watch for 1 year and it's done, it means it was probably only a 6 to 9 month production run. They were using the rest of the movements that they had, and these are the watches that you're going to see with a retail, at this level versus the Platinum. I think you're going to see that these really hold up extremely well over time.
Yeah, that's a fact. 1 year runs of precious metal Patek Philippe, especially with distinctive dial and metal combos, can be highly lucrative. The legendary 5070P, the 1 year run with the platinum case and the sunburst blue dial, that watch, though not steel Patek Philippe, is investment grade. And often it's constrained supply more than model family that ultimately determines whether a Patek is collectible. I guarantee you, in the long run, if this watch sees its production run come to a close either this year or the next, you will see more 5711s out there than you will see this, and the numbers don't lie, and gravity can't be denied. The more populous watch in the long run is usually worth less. The rare one is usually the investment piece. And I'll go one better. If you want to buy a weird Patek Philippe, I'm going to say it for the 50,000th time. Get a Neptune in steel with the salmon dial. Please, I'm trying to help you help yourself. That's the one to buy.
And you know what? I'll throw a little bit of watch insider information out there, which it's already made it to the forums, so if you know, you know. But the 5711/1A, both the white and the blue dial, just had a price increase. They are going to $30,000. And the 5712/1A in stainless steel is going to $40,000. So they're only increasing the price of 2 models, and you're seeing a roughly 20% price increase on both models, across the board. So big move happening from Patek Philippe.
So we had an interesting question from one of our users. Bengali M is asking, would you take this Patek or a Longa Datograph? I'll let you answer that, and then I'll give my take.
Well, I mean, a Longa Datograph is much more expensive. So, I think apples to apples, the question comes in, how much do you want to spend? me personally, the Patek all day. I'm not, I prefer the aesthetic of Patek Philippe. I think the Langes are a little too, surgical. Is that even the right word? Like, it's a little too...
you could say sterile, maybe?
Sterile. It's sterile in design for me. Again, they've got a very German aesthetic, and I prefer the, sort of the softer look of the Pateks.
I always found Pateks a little bit institutional. Like, I would say I perceive the exact opposite. I find the Lange, especially with the manual lined movement in the German silver, to be much more colorful, richer, deeper. This is an automatic movement, and if you're going to compare those two watches, a lot's going to come down to your personal preference for how much of the movement you can see at any given time. With something like a Lange or a Patek, I think you really want to be able to see as much as possible. For me, with the Lange, the movement's both more beautiful and more visible. So that would be a deciding factor for me. In terms of case metals and dial combinations, as well as two different generations of the datograph now, my preference amongst all possible permutations would be the first generation 39mm dado with a black dial in a white metal, and that works for me. That said, the Dufourograph, the Philippe Dufour rose gold with the black dial,
beautiful
in 39, that also works. That, I think, would you say at least that has some warmth and charm?
I think that definitely has more warmth and charm. The rose gold and black, I think, is has a little bit more of an edge to it, and you can find them pre-owned at at attractive prices, and and if you spot one in the market at the right time, right place, you can get them at the right price. That's the time to strike on the Langes.
They're both flyback chronographs. A big difference is going to be, do you want manual or automatic, and where do you stand on the annual calendar complication in the Patek, which to me is a big value added. Because how often do I use a chronograph? Never. How often do I use a calendar? Heck, I check the date on my watch every single day for memos, correspondence, letters. I use that all the time. And I'll also say this. The chronograph may be functionally the most useless of complications. Unless you're billing hours and you remember to look at it after you start it and stop it, you got to be a pilot timing standard rate turns to really need the complication. Almost everything is going to come down to aesthetics and which watch looks better to you. Because if it doesn't look better, why wouldn't you take the watch that looks better to you? No one buys the watch that looks less appealing and says, well, I made the right choice because of what people said on the internet or a forum.
I think that happens a lot, surprisingly. For me, I
think
care,
people do it,
I
but
care
it's not
most
right.
about how the watch looks to me. Like, we just had an Alan Silverstein watch that just left the other day, and I was like actually upset by it. Like, if I could have just kept it and never sold it, like that would have been the case, because I just loved going and looking at the watch. But some people would call you crazy. So
I think you got to buy what looks good to you. Let that be the first and last question you answer. And I'll say this, you can compare them a little bit more because the dado does lose a lot of value on the secondary market, and the 5960 relatively less.
Yeah.
All right.
So we'll answer one question, and then we'll get on to, we can talk about my picks for the show. Daniel Arison asked Tim and Brian, as experienced travelers to Geneva, is it worth buying a new or pre-owned watch there? What do you think of the watch tourism in general from a consumer perspective? So, answering your first question, you're really not going to find many pre-owned watches in Geneva. You're going to see a whole lot of watch shops, but not many places to buy a pre-owned watch. If you're looking for a pre-owned watch, definitely look here in the U.S. Well, I don't even know if you're here in the U.S., but look in the U.S. If you're looking for a new watch, again, you're going to have all of the branded boutiques there in Geneva. I wouldn't say it's that different than going anywhere else in the world where they have branded boutiques. You're going to see a similar selection of product. If anything, I think that you might see less of, call it, boutique exclusives, just because of where they're sending the watches everywhere in the world. You are going to see some of the nicest boutiques in the world. In particular, I would highly recommend going and seeing the Patek Philippe boutique there. It's absolutely amazing. They will give you a tour of the full boutique, show you around, walk you through every single watch.
Go to the top floor. It's where the grand complications are.
Yes.
And they're real. They're not display models.
So, and ask them to take you to the showroom as well, where it overlooks Lake Geneva. It's absolutely amazing. Definitely go to the Patek Philippe Museum as well. Check out the FP Shorn boutique, because it's actually at the manufacturer. What else would you say?
I would say here are a couple things to consider. When you go to Switzerland, Geneva in particular, yes, the factory boutiques do have better inventory, new inventory, than you'll see in the U.S. You go into Jaeger-LeCoultre, and all of a sudden they've got all the grand complications that their boutiques in the U.S. tend not to carry unless they're specifically ordered. You can go into independent retailers like Les Ambassadeurs on the Rue de Rhône, where they have crazy things, not just inventory of the ultimate in haute de gamme pre-owned. You'll see things like the Girard-Perregaux Constant Escapement. You'll see Chronometrie Fernand Berthoud. You'll see million-dollar humidors with lasers that cut the end of the cigar. That's a fun place to go. So you will find that inventory is very good, but there are A, no discounts, and B, pre-owned is simply a function of what was traded in on new watches.
But there's not really any places that are going to be displaying pre-owned for the most part.
They will have them, but they tend to be authorized dealers, not factory boutiques. No factory boutique has pre-owned. So these authorized dealers, you
might
have to
a
ask
single showcase.
them. Yeah, you have to ask them. They're there, and they're generally good. I find that new inventory in Switzerland and Germany is second to none. If you want a new watch, you're going to probably find a display example of something costing $300,000 when no other store in the world would stock it. What you're not going to get is any kind of discount or good opportunities to buy pre-owned.
Yeah, but you're also not going to get, like, you know, you're not going to see much in the way of steel Rolex. Like, you're not going to walk in and they're going to have steel Hulks and Daytonas and 5711s. You know, all of the stuff that's very difficult to find everywhere in the world, they're not going to have there available. You know, you're going to see your normal product that they would have in boutiques, with the exceptional product as well. You know, models of the constant escapements and things like that you know you wouldn't see in the Bal Harbour boutique for AP, but they'll have it there.
Yeah, if you want to buy steel Rolex and mainstream watches, fly down to Miami, go to the Aventura Mall. You're going between the Design District, Meisner Park in Boca Raton, and the Aventura Mall, you're going to be able to buy a mainstream model from every watch brand in the world. And you're going to be able to do it within the space of about 15 miles north to south. Now, if you want to see crazy eye candy, that's where the Swiss boutique hopping really comes in handy, because a lot of those boutiques are less about selling watches and more about acting as really big three-dimensional walk-through billboards for their brands. All right.
So moving on, we're going to talk about, with the time that we have left, my top 5 picks for the show. So getting us started right off the bat, we're going to get a picture popping up there. Somebody, I think, brought it up in the chat, is the IWC Portuguese or Chronograph. 150 years, limited edition to 2,000 pieces each. So IWC this year, for 150 years, came out with blue and white lacquer dials for many of the watches that are currently in their collection. These right here in particular, you know, caught my eye, A, because of just, you know, the way that they were finished, and B, that they finally, after years and years of waiting, equip these watches with an in-house movement, the caliber 69355, and at, you know, just over $7,000. So you now have a in-house movement in the Portuguese chrono with 2 beautiful dials, sapphire crystal case backs. The current retail price of the watch is $6,900. These are around $7,150. You know, obviously they're now going to be transitioning to these movements, right? Like, you know, as we move forward, I'm sure you're going to see that the full lineup has these.
Once the 4,000 have sold out, there will be a mainstream unlimited version of this watch.
Correct. So I think this watch was beautifully executed. You know, 2,000 pieces for the world is going to sell out like lightning. Both the watches are beautiful. The blue in particular, I think, is my favorite of the two. But the white with the white lacquer gives it a little bit of a pop that makes it a little bit more dressy. So on that black strap, you know, it's definitely you know, it could be worn you know, as a dress watch. So, you know, beautifully done. I think IWC had, you know, a knockout year. Nothing crazy out of the box. Actually,
tribute to Paul Weber in steel was crazy. I love that.
Actually, they are coming out with, which was not really shown, a 36mm green dial bronze, I think like Mark something, which I thought was absolutely awesome. Like, that may be an acquisition of mine if it actually looks good in person. I mean, great size, bronze, green, and hopefully, like, I'm one of like 9 people in the US that actually buy it.
Things to remember, guys. SIHH is now leg 1 of the new model year. It's not leg 1 of 2. It's leg 1 of many. Watches are released all year long. For the most part, SIHH is where brands will start to focus you on what they hope will be their major sales initiatives of the year, which is to say IWC is not going to be all and exclusively the 150th anniversary pieces this year, and JLC is not going to be all and exclusively the Polaris. They focus on their big splash, but then watches come out all year long. The SIHH brands do pre-Basel. The Basel brands do pre-SIHH. Some of them even camp out outside the SIHH show with their own exhibitions. And then there are the summer releases, the end-of-year releases, the event-related releases, like the watches that are going to come out at Watches and Wonders in February. So expect to see more. Like Brian said, there's more, and we've already seen some of it.
Mm-hmm. So they give like a sneak peek of other things to come. But if you're interested in buying a Portuguese chrono and you haven't pulled the trigger just yet, I think that this is a great one to get. It's going to be the first iteration of the watch with an in-house movement. It's limited to 2,000. The dial configurations are beautiful, so I would say run out and get it. Next watch is actually really fun for us. It is the Laurent Ferrier Gallet annual calendar. So we actually just picked up LF, so really exciting. Did you know this? I'm sure you knew this.
Yeah, I mean, I'd heard. I didn't know if it was my news to break, so
yeah. So there you go. We're now a Laurent Ferrier authorized dealer. So awesome. So the watches are absolutely beautiful. He makes only a little over, I think, 100 watches per year.
Yeah, the biggest year ever was 150 watches.
And we're a Resonance authorized dealer. The booths are next door to each other. It's the same U.S. distributor. He said, "Why don't you come over and check out LF?" We had always been interested in the line. We walked over, and watch after watch, we were blown away. I'm super excited to get these annual calendars into stock. This is the first time in a while that he has come out with a new caliber. To me, annual calendars are no-brainers. I don't know why not every single brand does one.
It's time to retire the triple calendar for every brand.
Forever. I mean, it makes perfect sense. It's I shouldn't even say for most people. If you're not wearing the watch every single day, and there's even one time when you need to reset the watch, it makes sense, in my opinion, to have an annual calendar. The watch has a vintage throwback to it. It's made in a pale yellow gold, steel, and I believe red gold as well.
Yeah, red gold hasn't been shown yet, but the interesting
the pale yellow was nice.
Yeah.
The steel, I think, was beautiful. You've got an 80-hour power reserve.
Manual wind.
Manual wind. That's the only drawback to me, is like that it's a manual wind. Like,
it's okay for me because this is a modular complication. I would rather cut out the winding rotor and the winding bridge to keep the watch slim in profile. Mm-hmm. That's a trade-off worth making. And
it's 40 millimeters, so it sits really nicely on the wrist. I think that if anybody's been thinking about getting a Laurent Ferrier, this is a great foray, into the brand. The only thing that, is long, and again, production's going to be small, right? Like,
right.
If you know that he's only making 110 to 130 watches for the year, how many of these is he really going to make? 30?
Yeah, and they do have a surprising number of models for the amount of watches they make.
A lot.
So you're
only like 2, 3, 5.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
By the way, it's pretty much, you go to SIHH, all your dealers show up, they place their orders, and at the end of the show, if a watch got ordered 4 times, there's 4 for the year, and that's it. And and that's what's so special about it, is that every single watch is, to the 9th degree, a limited edition.
Yeah, and they're beautifully executed. This is Geneva finishing at the highest level. The nice thing is they're not dogmatic about the way they do it. For instance, last year with the Montre École, the school watch, they had a raw brass finish to the steel model that was really special. So they're almost as adventurous in their movement finish and movement engineering as FP Journe is in his aesthetics. So I find this is a great counterpoint. We used to say that here, at Watchbox Gothenburg, for us, boutique meant FP Journe. Now we've gone another step, and we have brands like Resonance that'll make 400 to 450 watches a year, or Laurent Ferrier that might make 100 to 150, and you're getting closer and closer to your watchmaker, because when you go to SIHH and they now have public days, you meet him or his son Christian, and that's it. That's the booth.
So great watches. We're excited to have the line. So I'm sure you'll be seeing more pieces, throughout the year as they start coming in. Next watch, JLC Reverso Tribute Small Second. So I've been on the hunt now for a while to pick up a Reverso watch. I think that it's one of those watches that you should just have in your collection. It's iconic to the brand. It's an iconic shape. They're known for it. But for some reason, I have probably around a 7-inch wrist, maybe a touch smaller than that, and I've never, they're always either too small, a little bit too long, a little bit too thick. Like I'm always, or I just find something off about the watch. So, this one fit me absolutely perfectly. I love the blue. The strap is beautiful. It has the solid case back, which I've always wanted to have, one of these watches, engraved by, a gun engraver. Just something absolutely awesome on the watch that you flip it over, and it's not just the blank back or just my initials. So The only thing that threw me a little bit about the watch is that the strap is not a Fagliano strap. It's designed by Fagliano, but it is not, in fact, a Fagliano leather strap. That being said, I would probably order one for the strap just because I really do think that you can feel the difference between the leather.
And you can see it, too.
And you can see it in person, too. But the strap is beautifully executed, but I would probably order a Fagliano for it. And at $7,950, you know, I think that this watch is going to do extraordinarily well. I only wish it was limited edition for my own selfish purposes because I'd feel even better about, you know, picking one up.
Well, once you have it personalized, it'll be one of one.
Exactly.
Guys, there is a secret to this watch that is not being advertised but really needs to be. If you check out my Instagram, Tim_Masso, where I keep the content fresh and fun and frequent, this watch is designed to turn into a spectacular purple. And I can't even get it to reproduce itself because when I turn it to the camera, it turns back to blue. Just go on Instagram, check Tim_Masso, and look at the picture of the Reverso at the top of my page. It's a crazy purple that is literally like a metallic royal purple, and it changes seamlessly between that sort of light cobalt and the purple color. Again, I hate the fact that whatever chromatic process turns it purple is reversed when I show this picture to the camera.
By the way, I would want it even more if it was a purple dial. I might send this pic to them and say, can you just make me one with a purple dial that looks exactly like that, because it would be absolutely pimp. Next watch, so we can plow through these because we don't have much time left, is the, you know, I think that this watch has been talked about by everybody, and everybody seems to have an opinion on it, is the FP Shorn split-second chronograph. So we're going to get it up here on the screen, made in 3 variations, rose gold, titanium, and platinum. The picture that I have is the platinum variation of the watch, which was my favorite. They're probably trying to figure out how to get it up. It was like the only picture that I took it on my phone.
Well,
so
the good news is in February at Watches and Wonders, where this watch is going to be publicly unveiled in Miami, I'm going to have the
They're already here in the States.
I'm going to have the hands-on video. I've been promised a hands-on with the watch, so you're going to have a video on our studio's channel of the platinum version, which is the best of the 3.
So they've the titanium and the rose are going to be delivered first, followed by the platinum. I want to say it's around 58,000 retail for the titanium, 78,000 for the gold, and then 106 for the platinum. Aesthetically, the platinum was my favorite. Feel on the wrist, the titanium, just because I think, you know, it feels so nice and light. Surprisingly, at 44 millimeters, the watch fits extremely well. That's because of the way that the case is designed. You know, there's no lugs extending out from the watch. It sort of just comes straight down. So, you know, it fits probably much closer to a 42, I think, than a 44, as far as what most people would consider a 44 to a 42.
Yeah.
Just because of the way that the case is designed. So the watch is beautiful. The price point for the watch is bonkers. The guy is crazy. You know, $58,000 for a split-second chrono from FP Shorn. You know, a Lunga split-second chrono, as an example, is about $130. So, you know, let's call it, it's over double the price. Sorry, less than half the price of a Lunga. So the price is crazy. He's gonna, I mean, how many can the guy really make in a given year? I think for sure this is going to be an over retail watch when it eventually, you know, makes it out into the marketplace, which I think it is available. I think you are going to see this watch selling above the retail price.
And here's kind of the insight on this watch. It's really a stealth tonneau case. That's what I'm going to say about the shape of it. It wears like a tonneau, even though it's technically a round watch, and that's the key to the way this huge thing feels on the wrist and wears well on a small wrist. There were a couple questions I wanted to field really swift. Okay, question that came in, someone asked, why was I wearing a backpack in the background photos of me at SIHH? I was working. I was there doing...
Yeah, it's not vacation.
Yeah, exactly. I was there on behalf of Goffberg, Watchbox, and Richemont, and I was covering the new releases. I was attending press conferences. I was working with my film crew, and I was constantly gathering material, source material, to send back to my crew in the States. Their day started when mine ended. It was 10 hours a day on my feet taking the video and gathering information, and then another 2.5 hours of writing when I got back to my room. So it was fun, but at the end of those days, I went like this. And I completely just passed out on my bed when I got back to the States. Working with watches is still work, but what a rush. Wouldn't do anything else.
So answering one more quick question, there's a couple of people talking in the chat about 15400s, blue, black, gray, or white. The gray, white, the gray, silver, and black are available at the ADs. The blue is boutique only. So They all retail for, I believe, the same 17.8, but you know, the blues now at the boutique are virtually impossible to get. They're selling for, you know, over $20,000.
By the way, that's the platinum.
You know,
that's the platinum FP Shorn that we were talking about.
This is the platinum. So
that you're currently seeing.
So I don't really have that big a wrist, and you can see that even at 44 millimeters, it doesn't seem overly large. So. Amazing watch.
Trevor Phillips asked a question. I'm going to answer this in 30 seconds. What would you recommend as a first luxury watch for a 26-year-old? I want to help my brother choose his graduation present. It must be under $10,000. Okay, real quick, I'm going to say that most of the JLCs I bought, you've seen my grand complications, but most of them I bought for below $10,000. I think for chronographs, you're either going to go with an Omega Moon watch or you're going to go with a JLC Amvox 2 pusherless chronograph. It's a good size. It's a 44 that wears like a 42. Or you're going to get him a nice Reverso Duo. There are many options sub 10. I bought mine the night and day with the white gold case and the black dial. I bought mine for $7,000. And of course, there are many options from other brands. You're going to look at a whole host of Omegas and Breitlings and Rolex. Yes, Rolex. Don't forget, you can pretty easily get the 42mm Explorer 2 polar or black dial for well under $10,000, and that's a good versatile watch. And as a dual time, I'd have to say it's also a very practical one. Whether you travel a lot or simply know those who do, that's a great graduation watch, as long as you can wear the 42 Rolex Super Case.
So, you know, ending with a bang. My final pick is the AP RD #2 perpetual calendar in all platinum. So AP had a huge show. This to me was the showstopper of the bunch. The thing is crazy thin, like bonkers thin. It is the thinnest automatic perpetual that's ever been made. It is, I have it here, 6.3 millimeters in thickness. The watch is 41 millimeters. It's all platinum, and it is gorgeous. I have a picture here of the case back as well, which is, you know, the movement's beautifully finished, you know. And
shout out to JLC. That was once upon a time the JLC 920 Bausch. It's still made in-house by AP. It's also used by Vacheron. This is the movement that was developed in '67 for AP, Patek, and Vacheron. And this 2.89 millimeter thick perpetual movement is still based on the JLC Bausch. So, yeah.
So, you know, the watch is magnificent. They haven't officially announced like the rollout for, you know, it's going to be boutique
it's
only.
Technically
That's
a
obvious.
prototype.
It's technically a prototype. I'm sure that it's going to be rolled out, you know, eventually, and I'm sure it'll probably be a replacement for the current perpetual that they're producing. If I had to guess, I can't imagine them producing both at the same time and selling both.
It would have to be steel to replace the current perpetual.
Correct.
I could foresee a scenario
in
which they keep the current ceramic perpetual as a production model, and they replace the base metal and precious metal versions
with
this.
And then eventually perhaps the ceramic with this, but I don't know, can you get ceramic that thin?
I think they've probably approached the limit. It's thin as is.
Yeah, so the watch is magnificent. I'm sure it's probably going to be boutique only. Well, I shouldn't even say probably. It's AP. It's definitely going to be boutique only. You know, they had a lot of great new releases. I think the brand is on absolute fire. They closed even more doors here in the U.S. They're actually down to only 21 doors here in the United States. And we are the only retailer left that actually carries Patek Philippe and AP. So, you know, the brand is, you know, doing great things. Francois is doing a great job. You know, as you can see, when you try and find their watches, it's tough.
Right now, Patek Philippe, Rolex, FP Journe, Richard Mille, these are brands that have defied gravity for a couple of years, mostly because they've had very focused product strategies, and however many watches the market demands, they have always come up short of that. That's a lesson that the entire industry could learn, and it's not a secret. Like, there's no secret there. That's how you succeed.
Yeah. No, and I mean, answering Trevor Phillips, you know, honest question at this point, why doesn't AP just rename themselves Royal Oak? So, you know, you've got a lot of brands that, you know, sort of live off of, you know, a few collections. They've got the Royal Oak. They've got the, you know, they've got the...
It's the Royal Oak in the offshore.
It's the Royal Oak in the offshore. But that being said, you know, in an interview, the worldwide CEO, Francois, just, you know, they announced the rollout of AP pre-owned boutiques, which is huge. And in addition to that, next year they're going to be launching a brand new model to supplement the Royal Oak and the Offshore for a completely different case shape, which based on their track record, I think it's gonna hit, and I think it's gonna be huge and take the brand to a whole new level.
And there's kind of another piece to that news brief. It's that the Jules Audemars line, as you know it, is going to be going away, and the new collection is going to be supplanting that. So that's the full story. Now, François-Henri Bonamia, the current CEO, has been in power for a good solid 6 to 7 model years, and you're looking at the end of a journey that started then, because that is really the product development cycle for a small company like AP. They have impressive capabilities, but to roll out a full revitalized line that's all about dials, cases, end movements, and a new marketing campaign, yeah, it takes the better part of a decade to get a running start at that. So you're really beginning to see the fruits of his labors, first in this year's Royal Oaks and Offshores, which are spectacular, and next year you're going to see them flesh out the dress watch range, because before the Royal Oak in '72 and long before the Offshore in 1993, AP was already considered one of the big three, the Holy Trinity, and they did that with dress watches, and they did that with complications, and I think you're going to see a lot in both columns in the next 12 to 18 months.
I agree. So that's all we have for tonight, guys. I'm sorry we ran about 10 minutes over time, so if you have any other questions, or any questions about SIHH watches, or honestly anything you just want to hear about on the show, please feel free to email myself or Tim, and we're always available to answer questions and bring up cool and interesting topics on the show. So I'm Brian, this is Tim, this is the Watch Insider, and thank you guys for logging on.